Hey guys, Bobby Hughes here with Pride Custom Firearms, and I'm back to bring you the next video in our electric producing windmill series, or wind turbine. In today's video we're going to start working on the actual turbines, the actual blades for the turbine. But before we get started on that, I want to show you what kind of motor we're going to be using for a generator. I'm not going to go in a lot of depth with the electrical part of it because we're going to do that in its own video. Once we get everything mounted up and ready to be wired up, then we'll go over all the electrical. But there is one thing that I want to show you and point out that you need to take note of whenever you start working on your blades. Alright, so this here is a permanent magnet DC motor. And this particular motor I've taken out of a treadmill. And treadmill motors seem to be pretty popular for wind turbines or anything that's to generate power. And the reason being is because they have this nifty little flywheel here. And this is what we're actually going to mount our turbines to. But one thing I want to point out with you on this is, even though this is an electric motor, we can still use this to produce electricity. And I'll explain how it works in kind of a Barney style. That way you don't have to be a scientist or an engineer to figure it out. But like I said, it's a permanent magnet DC motor. So basically what it is you have on the shaft inside of here, the spindle or the axle, you have a round plate. And on that plate there's a number of magnets on there. Okay? And then around the outside of the case there are copper coils that line around the outside, and usually there's 3 of them, and we'll call that 3-phase. Now what happens is when you hook power to the motor, an outsource of 12-volt energy, what happens is it fires those copper coils, and it pulls the magnets and forces the motor to spin. So as the motor starts and it starts running, it gets faster and faster until it reaches the speed that it's programmed for. And that's how a motor is operated. But in our case, what we're going to do is we're going to reverse the process, and we're actually going to produce power by spinning the flywheel. Alright, now in this case I have my black lead and my red lead. I've got them hooked up to my meter here. And I'm going to move my meter up here to where you can see it. Hopefully you guys can see that display there. I don't know if you can or not. Let me see if I can move it over here to where you guys can see it. There we go. Now you'll notice when I start spinning this, we're going to start producing power. And the faster I spin it, the more power it produces. If I give it a good spin, then we get up to almost 6 volts. Alright, now if I spin it backwards, then we show negative. Alright, so that tells me that this motor will work no matter which way that it spins. Alright, so that is where the part about the blades comes into play. Most people aren't going to care which direction their motor spins in, but it's important to know which direction it is spinning in so that you know how to hook your wires up. In this case I have black to my black lead, or my common lead, and then I have red, hooked to my hot lead. That means that when I spin this motor clockwise, it produces power to the red lead, or to the red wire. Alright, but if I spin it backwards, what's happening is the polarity is reversed and it's producing power on the black wire. So now when I hook this up, depending on how my blades are shaped, will depend on which way the motor spins in the wind. So that will determine how I want to hook my leads up so as to produce power and not draw power. I want my windmill to spin to the right. So that's how I'm going to lay my blades out. And when I lay them out, I'll show you how to lay it out to make it spin to the left, if for whatever reason you want yours to spin to the left. But a good rule of thumb is to keep it like it's designed and let's go to the right. Alright, so before we get started on working on the blades, you guys know I don't draft very much or draw plans or anything like that, but I have drawn out sort of a plan, a rough sketch, and I want to show you guys what I came up with. Now, this was the first sketch that I did here. You see I crossed this one out. So I laid this sketch out, and you see these are mirrored. One has the mount on the bottom side, one has the mount on the top side. And that's going to be the determining factor, because the other side is what's going to have the bevel on it, and that's what, when the wind pushes it, makes the direction for you. This one here would cause my motor to spin to the left. I don't want that. I want it to spin to the right, so I need to cut them out like this. And then here is a bigger scale of what I've came up with. This is what I want my blade to look like when I get done with it. Now on the front side here, we're going to call this the lead edge. This is what cuts into the wind. We're going to put a round bevel on it. Alright, and then the back side, this is our trailing edge. It's going to be shaped kind of like an airplane, the back side of an airplane wing. Alright, and so we want that to be at a slope, or a 45, or maybe not 45 degrees, but a sharp point, so that as the wind passes across it, it can blow off the back just like an airplane wing. So I'll go ahead and get started. Alright, so wind turbine blades, if bought on a small scale for a self-propelled or wind-propelled wind generator like this, would cost you quite a bit of money, alright, because they're specially designed. But a designer named Abe Connolly actually came up with a way using PVC pipe to make a wind turbine blade. So what we're going to be using today is 8-inch Schedule 80 PVC pipe. And you don't have to use Schedule 80. Schedule 80 is pretty hard to find. You actually have to buy it from a plumbing or a plastic supplier. And in this case, I paid $20 a foot for this. But you can also use Schedule 40. It's just not going to last as long, and you're not going to be able to get the exact kind of sanding texture or profile on it that we would be able to get with the Schedule 80. First thing I want to do is I want to lay a piece of angle iron on here. Now, by using the angle iron, that makes sure that I have a nice straight edge, because you can't put a piece of angle iron on something round out of square. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is just go ahead and make a mark. And now I've got my first reference point. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a tape measure, and I'm going to pull off of my line that I just made, and I'm going to go 5 3/4 inches. Then I'll lay my angle iron back on here. And make another mark. So what you're going to need to make three blades, you're going to need 2 pieces of this 24-inch pipe, 5 3/4 inches wide. So we'll end up having to make another line and another cut, and then we'll just go ahead and cut them out using the jigsaw. Guys, so what I've done now is I've taken my piece of 5 3/4 inch wide pipe, and I've marked from this corner in 1.5 inches. And I've done the same over here. I've came in 1.5 inches as well. And I'm going to take a yardstick and just lay it from tip to tip and hold it in place here. And we're going to draw a diagonal line across our pipe from the 1.5 inch mark to the 1.5 inch mark. And it will make it'll actually cut it in 2 mirrored pieces that are exactly the same, but you want to make sure to leave this 1.5 inches on both ends here. So now I'll go ahead and cut that. Alright, so once you get your two pieces ripped in half, you'll see that they're mirror images of each other. And on each one you have what we're going to call our trailing edge, which is our straight, perfectly straight edge. And then you have what we call is our leading edge, which is the angled edge. And that's the edge that actually has the grade to it, or the slope. Alright, now in order for our wheel to spin clockwise, you need your leading edge to face to the right. Alright, so in other words, and it needs to be the beveled edge that comes to you. So when we mount this to our flywheel, this needs to be mounted flat while the beveled edge flights out or faces out to you, which will be our leading edge. And that, when the wind hits that will push that leading edge around. Alright, so now what I've done is I've come down here and I've came off the corner of our square edge, which is our trailing edge, and I came over 1.5 inches and made a mark, and then I came up 3 1/4 inches and made a mark. Now I want that to be a perfect rectangle there, okay? But then from our 3 1/4 inch mark right here on the leading side, I just made a little swirl so that helps that helps cut into the wind, and 2, it also helps to take some of the turbulence off of the other turbines as the wind passes across it and it spins. Alright, so what I'll do is, there's no specific measurements on this, I just kind of free-handed it. So what I'll do is I'll cut one, and then I'll lay it on top of the other one and use that as a stencil to make my second and third cuts. Alright, so now that we've got our blades cut out, what we need to do is we need to round off the front of our leading edge. So what I'm going to do to round that off is I have just a regular angle grinder here, side grinder, and I've got a sander disc on here. Now this sander disc is pretty worn out, I don't know how long it's going to make it. I actually bought a new one today, but I left it at work. So anyway, I'm going to see how much I can get done with this one wheel here, and if we can get one of the blades sanded with it tonight, then that way you guys can see what's going on. So it's going to kick up a lot of dust, so be sure that you're wearing at least eye protection, and if you don't want to dig gray stuff out of your nose for a week, I would recommend wearing a respirator too. So we'll go ahead and get started on that. Alright, so once you get it sanded, the contour on it, just go back with some sandpaper or a sanding block and just round it off and make it nice and smooth. And then we can move on to the trailing side. So on the trailing side, what we want to do is, instead of rounding it off, we want a nice sharp tapered edge on the back. So I'll go ahead and get started on that, and I'll show you when I get it done. Okay, so when your blade is all done, then it should look something like this. We have a completed blade here minus the mounting holes, and our leading edge here has a nice round finish on it. See how it's kind of rounded off? It's got a nice rounded off finish, and that's actually going to be what chops into the wind when our wind blows. It's going to spin like this. Alright, and then our trailing edge has a nice sharp taper on it. See the taper? And what that's going to do is it's going to allow the air to just swoop right off the back of it, just like an airplane. Alright? So that is what your finished blade should look like once you get it all sanded down, cut out, sanded down, and everything else. Alright, so that's the finished one. Now I've got 2 more I need to sand down and do. and we'll be all through fabricating our blades. And then the only thing that'll be left to do is just drill the holes for our mount to mount it to the flywheel. But we'll do that in the next video. So anyway guys, that's it for this video. That's how you make the blades, and also what type of motor we're going to be using. In the next video, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and mount these to the motor, to the flywheel, and we'll go from there. So anyway guys, we're getting close to being done. Once we get our blades mounted on the flywheel and we get the motor mounted, get our wiring done, I'll just button up some loose ends on the whole thing, and it'll be ready for paint, and we'll be good to go. So maybe 3 more videos left and we'll be all finished. So anyway guys, that's it for this video. If this is the first video you've seen, go back and check out the other videos. I think there's 4 or 5 videos out right now on the process up to this, and that'll get you all caught up. Don't forget to subscribe. There's a clickable link at the end of this video that'll automatically subscribe you to the channel so that you can get updates every time a new windmill video is posted. All right, and also go ahead and check out my other videos on the US Brotherhood 11B channel. All right guys, so until next time, get out there, shoot some guns, be safe, and most importantly, have fun. See you guys later.